Good evening, everybody. My name is Brandon Aldis. I work in the Office of Business Central at SUNY Adirondack. Within our office, we house all different sorts of services from small business development to entrepreneurship services and career readiness. So we help our students get ready to be in careers, whatever they're earning their degree in. We do things like cover letter review, resume review, that sort of thing. We also review business plans. We work with a few others on the call. Kim London works with us on our Startup 80K course, which is an 8-week course that preps entrepreneurs to either start their business or sit back down and say, I'm not quite ready to quit my day job. I need a little bit more planning. So we're excited to have Kim with us. And then Bonnie Stouffer, who is also on the call, is the director of Business Central. So we're very fortunate to have a wide-reaching network to be able to connect people with whomever they need. Our office strives to be the conduit between outside businesses working with the college and the college working with outside businesses. So if there's ever anything we can do, you all have our contact information now just from signing up for this workshop. So one, thank you so much for registering. And two, if there's ever anything we can do for you, whether you're looking for employees or looking to scale up your business or just need a little help or support, please reach out to us. So this evening, we're very excited to be hosting this program, Tourism and Hospitality, Bouncing Back from COVID-19. COVID-19 has affected a bunch of different industries. Last week, we hosted a conversation on agriculture. This week is tourism and hospitality, and next week will be food and beverage. So we're very excited to bring this series to all of you and provide an opportunity for those specific to these industries to have a platform to talk a little bit about the changes that have happened over the last 7 weeks and the changes we see moving forward. So tonight, just to have a little bit of housekeeping, this session again is being recorded. If anyone who's joined us after my previous announcement, please feel free to right-click and hover over your little profile box. You have an opportunity there to shut off your camera and or change your name if you're uncomfortable with this session being recorded and your information being out there. Please keep your microphone on mute unless you are talking. For the best viewing, set your Zoom to speaker view. That'll allow who's ever speaking to be highlighted in green and be at the top of all of these little grids of people that we're seeing, much like the Brady Bunch. For questions, please type hand in the chat window on Zoom or literally raise your hand, whichever functionality you're comfortable with. I will call on you in order to ask your questions during natural pauses in the presentation. There will also be a time at the end for anyone to ask any questions that they have. Alternatively, you can also shoot an email to businesscentral@sunyacc.edu, and we will do your best to address your question either in the call or respond to you after with one of our panelists. If your question was directed towards a panelist, we'll connect you with them and make sure your question gets answered. So welcome everyone to our session tonight. Tonight's conversation will be moderated by Dr. Kelly Burgos Hatton. She's a professor of business at SUNY Adirondack and has worked in tourism, hospitality, and education for over 35 years. Kelly owns 3 small businesses in our area providing goods and services: Performance Marketing Associates, Mixeritas, which is a mobile bartending business, which I mean, who of us couldn't use that right now? As well as Mix-A-Fusion, which is some homemade simple syrups to be able to enhance whatever beverage you currently have on hand. So Kelly has a lot of experience in the tourism hospitality field, and we felt it best to have her moderate tonight's discussion with our panelists. So with that, I will turn it right over to Kelly to continue the conversation. Again, just keep in mind our housekeeping tips. If you have a question, type in hand or raise your hand and we'll get to as soon as we can. Kelly, over to you.
Thanks, Brandon. Well, welcome everybody. I want to start by just introducing the panelists that we have tonight. First, we have Mark Berneinson. He is a professional wedding planner. He owns allwedoisepic.com+++. He's in upstate New York. He's our leading special event director. His years of experience include over 1,000 events, countless hours of planning, directing, and executing flawless, successful special occasions for his clients. He remembers every single person by name and date, so he is just amazing. He's a proud U.S. Coast Guard veteran and previous public safety officer, firefighter, and EMT. He brings his discipline and organizational skills to event management, ensuring the most memorable experience for clients and guests. His passion for entertaining will ensure your once-in-a-lifetime event is epic. So thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
The next panelist is Gina. She is the Executive Director of the Lake George Regional Chamber of Commerce and CVB, Convention Visitors Bureau. As the Executive Director of the Lake George Regional Chamber of Commerce and CVB, Gina is responsible for the overall development of the processes, productivity, and profits that directly impact tourism in the Lake George region. She manages a staff of 13 full-time and part-time seasonal and full-time staff who work at the Chamber and the Convention Visitors Bureau. And she also manages 3 visitor welcome information centers, including the newly opened Adirondacks Welcome Center that you'll see between exit 17 and 18 north of I-87. The newly opened Welcome Center has been a hit with everybody coming through. We hear all good things about it constantly. And personally, I've had several students that have been fantastic interns there, and they love every minute of it. So thank you, Gina, for that. Gina worked for the Albany County Convention and Visitors Bureau before this as a director of sales, working with Albany County hotels and the entire hospitality community in bringing meeting, convention, and sports business to the city. She's also involved in local, state, and national industry organizations, including ESSA, which is the Empire State Society of Association Executives, Meeting Professionals International, which is MPI for Northeastern New York State Hospitality and Tourism Association, New York State Destination Marketing Organization, as well as the Warren County Council of Chambers, SUNY Adirondack, SUNY Delhi, among others. She's also a graduate of the University of Florida and received her master's in hospitality administration through UNLV, which is in Las Vegas, and that was in 2011. So thank you, Gina, for joining us tonight. Appreciate it. And Scott is our third panelist. Scott McKenna is the president of Catamount Consulting. He is one that provides expertise in all facets of workplace safety and regulatory compliance in construction, manufacturing, mining, firearms, and all areas of business. Scott has more than 24 years of experience in the mining and construction industry and is a certified instructor with the Mine Safety Health Administration, also known as MSHA, and is an OSHA certified construction trainer. He has authored or contributed to several published articles and lectures on a regular basis to a wide variety of businesses and safety professionals. Scott is also committed to coaching and fitness, serving as a head assistant varsity wrestling coach at Warrensburg Central School for nearly 20 years. He is committed to excellence in coaching, has led to the team compiling more than 100 wins and 5 consecutive career wins at the championship seasons, along with multiple wrestlers qualifying for the prestigious New York State Championships. Scott believes that we are all coaches within the people business and that a successful coach must have high levels of emotional intelligence to assure each team member is coached to contribute their individual best. So thank you so much, Scott and Hudson.
Welcome. Thanks, Kelly.
You're welcome. So we're going to start the conversation now. This certainly has been a time of flux as we await guidance on opening up businesses across regions in the state. Tonight, we will focus on the hospitality and tourism industry and explore key learnings from the pandemic shutdown, successes from this time, and insights that might help our community prepare for what is to come. So first, I'll have each of you, if you want to do a 30-second introduction of your role and background, if you want to add anything to what we just said, feel free. Mark can go first if you have anything you want to throw in there.
Sure. I mean, just about the portfolio that we have here. I mean, yes, we're, you've got me tagged there as a wedding planner. We also have entertainment, photo, video. We run a barn venue in Lake George, and we do a huge chunk of destination travel and destination weddings. So it's kind of a big portfolio that's all related to weddings and whatnot, and travel and tourism. So
excellent. Thank you, Mark. Yep. Gina, do you want to add anything?
Just glad to be here. And right now I'm part of a team from throughout the whole region working on, what's our recovery plan and how will we help our businesses open safely and to welcome guests safely and across all sectors from hospitality, restaurants, even to churches, and small businesses in between. So looking forward to, coming out of this in a new way of what our life will be like.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. And Scott, would you like to add anything else about you?
Sure. It's first of all, great job putting this all together. Second, nice to meet all of you. You are mostly all in a much different sector than I spent a lot of time in. And frankly, we haven't stopped because we spent a lot of time with the mining and construction. So for the last 8 weeks, we've been extremely busy keeping all the essential folks running in the way that they need to be and staying safe. And hopefully we get to an opportunity to talk a little bit about things that you can do when you get a chance to reopen. So I look forward to it, and I will kick it back to you, Kelly. Someone just buzzed in there.
Yeah, I heard that. Thank you. Thanks, Scott.
You're welcome.
All right, so we're going to start with Gina, because you have such a broad view and wear so many hats. What has been your greatest challenge during this time, and how have you overcome it?
So right now, it's really keeping up with normal day-to-day operations of the Chamber, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and the Welcome Center. Our Welcome Center, we have essential employees there because we have a vending program. So we still have travelers and other essential travelers coming through that Welcome Center. So we have 2 employees that work there, and keeping our vending program stocked. And for those of you who have never been to the Welcome Center, we have a Taste New York vending program. So you can't buy a Coke or a Pepsi, but you can buy a Cooper's Cave soda. You can buy a Just Water. You can buy a Saratoga water. You can buy a Martha's ice cream sandwich, since you can't get one at Martha's right now. And you can't buy Cheez-Its, but you could buy cheese curds from a local Argyle cheese farmer, Nettle Meadow. So that's the kind of food items that you can purchase there. So it's been interesting to keep our staff safe and adhere to state regulations for being open, and what they're seeing of what's to come as people are coming back and traveling and want to be here in the Lake George area. And then as a chamber, it's really hand-holding our businesses to stay hopeful and positive during a time of such uncertainty, and helping folks navigate all of everything from the PPP program to the SBA loans, and do they qualify, and disseminating that information in an urgent manner, which we did immediately, and then working with them now that they've been accepted or got that money, and your business can't be open, but you've got this PPE, and now will it be forgiven, and how do you navigate that? So we spent a lot of time with those new challenges, and yet still operating day to day. Still have staff, got to do reviews, got to, make sure we have a board meeting, and learning the new technologies like we've all been learning. Did I cut somebody off of a Zoom call today? Probably. So that, just all of these new things that we're learning, and then doing it from my spare bedroom and my home office that I didn't really use before because I would be at our office. So that's been very challenging, is learning that. I have not missed, running frenetically to event to event to event. And I didn't realize how much I did of that until all of a sudden I don't have a mileage check, because I haven't logged any miles. But this technology I feel like I've talked to more people substantially than just floating around a mixer, so I've gotten to talk to a lot of people one-on-one about their business to truly understand it and how we can help or get them to the right person to help them. We've got so many wonderful colleagues in the market, a lot of smart people that know their business. I don't pretend to know your business inside out, backwards and forwards, but the more I get to know you, I know how I can connect others to you where you can help each other. So that's been a big deal. And I think the biggest thing that that's come out of this for me so far has been the collaboration of others. So the barrier between you're my frenemy or my competitor is gone. Now we are all in this together. And then how do we lock arms and sing Kumbaya so that we can all be successful coming out of this? So that's, especially even down, I can see some names here of some of our smaller business owners, and they're going to need supplies that the big guys are able to buy, and and the big guys are already planning of how they can help those little guys buy and purchase products that they're going to need, because the ways of cleaning your business now, going to Walmart or BJ's and what you think is the right stuff, or grab the wipes from your home to clean a portion of your business, it's going gone. So so I've learned a lot of new things, and I've learned a lot about businesses that I didn't know 7 weeks ago. And so I in that regard, I feel very privileged to be here in this chair and among all of you, and helping us all come out of it together. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I think, there's silver linings in everything, and you're certainly grabbing that. I think we all have to do that at this point. So thanks, Gina. Mark, as an event planner, your view is unique. We're heading into wedding and event season. How have you been able to shift your business to serve your clients?
I think the biggest thing is, especially for the wedding industry, but I think a lot of the regular special events too, most people are just postponing. So, I think every business around here is experiencing the same thing. It's been very easy. Just there's a bunch of dates, people looking at it, pick and choose, and eventually you get them, switched over. So a lot of that starts with the venue first. Whatever venue they're having, that has to have the date open. So they would usually start there. Then they work with, either the planners or the entertainment or the photographers. Those tend to be the big ones to make sure that those people also have those dates. So usually I get an inquiry for a date change. It's changed within a day or two. On a rare occasion, it might take a week, but it's been pretty effortless. Thankfully, I've had harder trouble on the destination side, because now you're talking, up here you're talking, let's just say I'm trying to work with 40 people who need to change dates. If I'm trying to change dates with Sandals or one of the Caribbean resorts I work with, there's 4,000 people who want those dates. So it's a little bigger market down there. It's a little trickier down there. Plus, all their employees are working on cell phones in these islands, and the reception is horrible. So I was just making changes to 6 bookings today, and it took 2.5 hours, just because they're not working on a good Wi-Fi. It just takes forever.
Well, thank you. Are you doing anything different at all in terms of just reaching out to people? Or are you waiting for them to call you? How are you handling that?
Yeah, we've sent initial emails to everybody, and most people have responded, all the way up through till like July. And I got to be honest with you, I have a lot of clients who are extremely still hopeful for June, who have picked backup dates but haven't formally made changes yet. And I've told everyone, you got to pick a date regardless. But they're hanging on, okay. I mean, I'm hanging on with you, because if we don't do your wedding, I'm doing nothing anyway. So, it's not like I'm going to go do something else. I'm there if it comes down to happening. But my biggest concern, which I think Gina talked a little bit about, is just, with the facilities now, that if things are allowed, how are they going to be cleaned and sterilized and all those things? That's going to be a monumental undertaking, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Mark. Yeah. Scott, you have enhanced your consulting focus. You mentioned that just a few minutes ago, because of the business that you're dealing with now, to adding up supplies for businesses during this time of the COVID-19. How did you do that? What did it entail?
I'd love to tell you I know exactly step by step, but things just happen in the dust when they're trying to make it settle. It's the folks that need to work out there immediately. As all of us know, the general public just flocked and took all the hand sanitizer and all the toilet paper and all of the things that we needed to work with. And then on top of it, the governor checked in with all the construction and mining firms and say, hey, if you got any masks or N95s, we really could use them in the hospitality. Absolutely, we'll ship them out. And then as time progressed, we needed hand sanitizer to keep our hands clean, and we needed face coverings to keep our social distancing issues under control. So we had to work with as many vendors as we could find that were making rags for cleaning cars and T-shirts for promotional events, and they started making face coverings. And distilleries, as most of you have seen, are switching over to make hand sanitizer. And we were working on the weekends to pick up gallons and gallons of this stuff so we could get it out to the folks to clean shovels, rakes, steering wheels, levers and equipment, et cetera, for all those folks. So yeah, it's we transitioned into selling product, or at least pushing the product out there to make sure that the folks had them, and even a little bit of hoarding ourselves. I think I got 12 spray bottles in the back of my truck for anyone who needs to spray hand solution on their hands, because it's the last dollar store in Warrensburg that found some. So yeah, different challenge for us anyways.
Absolutely. Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Now I have just a couple questions I want to ask, and I'm going to ask them kind of to all three of you, and you can jump in and decide who wants to speak first. The first one is, what are some of the successful pivots that you have seen within the tourism and hospitality industry? Gina.
I would say it's really been the collaboration. So for instance, we have this work group now of several people coming together and looking at our whole industry of how do we keep people safe, and what are those finer points of sanitizing, cleaning versus sanitizing, two different things. And then what are the steps that everybody's going to need to take to keep your employees safe, as well as your guests. Everything from as you make your reservation online to how if you come to a hotel motel, and then coming into the lobby, we're pulling away furniture and we want to, there's not going to be anything on the counter for you to touch. I mean, all those little details, but then in the meantime, keeping your own staff safe. We were on a call yesterday and we had, or earlier this week, today's Wednesday, maybe it was Monday. We had the VP of Stewards telling us what the changes that they've made. And they've evolved as they've learned new things of how to operate their business. And we're going to take it from them because they're doing it day in and day out. And each of us might have seen that when we've gone to the grocery store, the changes that are being made day in and day out. And how are we responsible as customers, as well as how is the employer responsible as an employer? And then how are they responsible to their customers? So you've got three dynamics going on. And so I think in that regard, we've seen, we're all pivoting, either to become responsible citizens and customers to being responsible employers and businesses. So that pivot and at the basis of it is the collaboration of everybody and the willingness to help. So if you've seen somebody unwilling, then they've been like that jerk who comes in. It's like, I'm never wearing a mask. You know what I mean? And you're like, oh, we're all in this together. You do need to do that because I need you to keep yourself safe because it keeps me safe. So I think that the collaboration and the willingness of people to help and has been really a big pivot.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Mark or Scott, do you have anything you want to throw in there?
I haven't seen, as far as tourism and hospitality goes, I haven't seen anything that Gina didn't mention, or I think everyone's seen just how all the restaurants are really doing, the curbside thing, and a lot of stores are doing that too. Some of the unique things I saw were more on the DJ end, about, you're seeing drive-by bubble parties, you're seeing DJs doing mobile block parties and things like that. I don't think to the degree they're making very much money, but at least they're pivoting for, to do something, and it gets them out of the house a little bit and helps the community a little bit. So that's really about all I've seen. I think majority of smart business owners anyway, who are literally stuck at home, and someone like me who would normally be out working on a weekend, and then just doing prep all week. It's just all about, marketing, making new marketing videos, reorganizing your websites. I have a lot of people I've seen are using the time to rebrand and things like that. So those are really the things that I've seen.
I agree. I see a lot of retooling of, people and businesses. Absolutely. Scott, do you have anything you want to throw in here?
I think you're going to see a big pivot in the next 4 weeks in this industry. So I believe the best is still to come, where when you start opening this stuff up, they're going to figure out ways to really make it all work. The ones that are going to stay successful, the ones that don't, they won't stay in business. So you're going to have to be resourceful. Give it 4 weeks. You'll see some really neat stuff.
I think we're definitely going to see a lot of changes. I feel that very strongly from, probably everybody on the call today too, is trying to figure out how to make it work, to their best ability with what they have. And then obviously, as Gina was mentioning, the consortium purchasing was going to be, that's going to be essential, I think, to everybody.
Sure.
So I have another question. What are the biggest issues to reopening the region for tourism and hospitality, especially now that we have been, I think, categorized in the capital region as the last I saw? That could change, but what do you think is going to be the biggest issue? Or
controlling the capacity is going to be the issue, especially this time of year. And anybody from anywhere, even if it's, from Gloversville or from Western New York, they want to come to our area. How do you control the capacity? It's like how they have to control Americade. Not that many people, but it's that same concept. Like every day of summer, how do you control it?
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a big one, I feel.
Yeah, there's a step before it, and it's a step that we spend our time in a lot at Catamount is what are you doing as a business person, as an employer to protect your number one resource, which is your employee.
Right.
So there's plenty of rules and regulations that state that we have to provide a safe and healthy workplace for our employees. And to date, it's been, do you have fire extinguishers and emergency evacuations and CPR and first aid? But now you've got a pandemic, a COVID-19 virus that is potentially deadly. And it's going to slip right in there as you have to have competent people that know how to understand and recognize COVID symptoms, train your staff, have competent people on site, have the appropriate workplace examinations, an action plan or a policy, which some of our small businesses inside of the hospitality arena don't necessarily have a business safety policy. They may have an employee manual, but you got to have an action plan. You got to have competent people and supervision to oversee it. You got to train employees. You got to have the workplace exams, and you better be documenting, because if you aren't documenting it and there's an illness, that's a workman's comp injury, as well as a reportable, as well as all the other things that follow. So big piece when you kick this thing back open.
Scott, would you recommend the hospitality industry considering having a certain safety officer or someone in that kind of guideline versus the manager on duty, but having someone else that might have a different set of skills that's kind of available at all times?
It could be anyone you designate. If you're a sole proprietor, it could be you and a couple of employees could be underneath your supervision. But yes, the Plattsburgh Chamber of Commerce is really opening this up because they've got a number of manufacturing, construction, and mining companies. And Vermont is really what we're mirroring. Vermont passed a standard and a name to it. For a competent person, you have to have a COVID-19 safety resource officer. If you want to open, you better have someone assigned to every single project, every single job that can serve as a competent person to train the trainer, essentially, is what they're getting, to pass on the information, and a blanket policy that was approved by CDC and the Department of Labor, and et cetera. We've worked with them to create a policy that you can put in, fill in the blanks, put in your name, and make sure that you have something that all the employees can read and understand. So there's a number of things that have been in play the last 8 weeks. What we're going to do with the Plattsburgh Chamber of Commerce, as well as a lot of other groups similar to this, and it's not my expertise necessarily, is we're going to have very specific sectors. That's what the governor's using, is sectors. As we open up different sectors in this 4 phase, we're going to have very specific programs we're going to want to do for those sectors. So in my mind, motel, hotel, hospitality would have very specific items that they have to look at above and beyond just the COVID requirements. Golf courses, they have very specific. I was talking to some hairdressers today, and things like, and I don't want to take on this whole topic here, but it just occurred to me, I'm not a hairdresser. But the gal and the guy that was in the conversation was like, well, we're going to rotate people through every 15 minutes. And the other guy says, well, hold on a minute. Don't do that, because if I come in as person number 2, I want to see you cleaning up after person number 1. I don't want to come in 15 minutes and it's already gone. I'm going to assume that you didn't do anything. So it's just like brainstorming on some of these ideas to make sure that we're addressing these concerns. Hairdressers, golf courses, manufacturing plants, mining, construction, they're all different sectors. So you're going to have some specific items to be able to take care of them.
And to Scott's point, that's happening right now in our own county. So our county administrator, Ryan Moore, has tasked several different people to, okay, you're responsible for the insurance industry, get us your report. We have a call tomorrow Friday with the restaurant industry. We met with them today with several restaurateurs who will help us guide that, overarching, these are all the little things you need to think about, the big picture, and then drilling down to the little things. And so there's smart people around that sector, to Scott's point. And I did see that earlier today, that the North Country Chamber is doing the whole safety resource officer. And I sent that to 2 of the employees on my staff to say, who are we going to designate in our office? Should we bring it up on our staff meeting call? Because, for small businesses, we still need that as well. Who is responsible for, we had somebody in the morning wiping down things before we all went remotely to the afternoon, but that comes down to us policing ourselves just in our office, in addition to what's happening across the board. But Scott mentioned, as first, Mark mentioned the capacity. We have a lot of smart people that are thinking about that capacity right now. How do you, for Americade, yeah, they might do it for that event and what that looks like. But again, if you've got 50 people walking on Canada Street, are they socially distanced? Do people have masks on? I know last week, Ryan Moore had the signs changed, all the variable message boards got changed all around the county. So you would see wear your masks, practice social distancing versus stay home, because people are out and about. It's warmer. It's, I got to get somewhere. So that education I know in our hospitality world is going to begin with the staff, to how are those resources? Can we take your temperature as you arrive? Can we talk to you about how you're feeling so we can document that and keep that on file? So as part of the social, the tracing, and then where does that information where is it kept? So that's just first and foremost from a staff standpoint. Mm-hmm. And then how does that policy change? Are we going to go to our HR people to help us write that policy for our handbooks? As well as, then how are we training our staff before we've even opened our doors to allow people in? So, I mean, those are all new things that are going to happen for every business. It doesn't matter if you're in the hospitality business or you're in the restaurant business or if you're in the insurance business. You're going to need to change some policies just right at home in your office.
Yeah. And we have all that done, Gina. So I'll give that to you and you can just hand it out to anyone that wants it. That's all we're doing. That's
awesome.
We're working directly with
Kelly, thank you for bringing us together with Scott today.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Don't recreate it. The recreation in my mind is just there's a lot of people that know about their business, and you mentioned this, that I don't know about, and we have to pull them in to put those little custom touches to things like the hairdresser analogy or cleaning mm-hmm. off menus. And it's just not something I think about. I go to the restaurant, I have a beer and food, and I don't think about all the problems they have to deal with that are going to be an issue with this stuff. So I can help you with all that stuff.
Thanks,
so
Scott.
At least the stuff that I got.
Willingness and collaboration.
Exactly.
My biggest takeaways so far in the last 7 weeks.
Well, and I just have to break, because I want to go back to just the fact that when we are in the hospitality industry, our job, we always think we have to cater to the customer, the guest that's coming. We want to make sure we're rolling out everything perfectly, and they have to realize, which is going to be a big part of us training them, but they have to realize that it's not going to be the same. And I take into account things that, I read over the weekend about Buck Mountain and some of the trails. Everybody's looking to get healthy because they're home. They want to get out. They want to hike our beautiful trails, which is fantastic, but we can't have the capacity problems, which we did because, they had to, I think, shut it down at 12:30 because people were parking in the middle of the drive and no one was socially distancing. There was too many people, and that's happening all over the place in the Adirondacks. We don't want to turn people away and have them not want to ever come back to our area. So there's going to be a fine line of how do we say, here's the welcome mat, we're rolling it out, but also you need to not come this weekend, you can come next weekend, you have to wait for an hour, have these queue lines or whatever it's going to be. I think that's going to be some of the struggle that we're going to have to overcome. And that is also going to be a training piece that, the owners, the managers of these locations are going to have to somehow get across to the employees and empower the employees to make some decisions, which perhaps before they either weren't allowed to, or they just didn't know how to. So there's definitely going to be a ton of training coming through. And obviously there's several of us on the call that would be willing to jump in and help at any point. So, certainly reach out as we're going forward. So back to the actual program. Did any of you apply, or are you telling businesses to apply for any of the relief programs that the government has put forward?
Yes.
Has anybody done that?
Yeah, we
applied,
did.
But we
all
have
our companies did. Sure.
Yeah, encourage folks to do that, and some successfully, and some are on pins and needles because now it's, so I have one business, we'll say the lodges at Crest Haven and the Boathouse restaurant, mm-hmm. So they needed to bring back their employees for that forgiveness loan. And then they were limited as to what the employees could actually do. You know what I mean? So it was like the chicken and the egg whole piece there. And then you have another one who they're debating whether or not to not accept the money because their restaurant, will say the Lake George Beach Club, he's got several 50 employees, but he's not making any money to come in to keep them working. The takeout didn't work for him. Not, there wasn't that business. And so it's like, then I can't take that money because I don't have the employees working, and I can't afford a 1% loan.
Right.
And then another business said I looked at it as a 1% loan, and then we budgeted for that. So I think that there's been a myriad of ways of how people are looking at that.
Well, and I've heard several, kind of anecdotal pieces of information that have been, we really wanted to, but our employees that we furloughed or we laid off are refusing to come back because
Yes,
they're
we've
making
had
so
that.
much
We've heard
money
that as well.
being laid off. And that's a huge challenge because they want to get back into it. But hey, if you're making, $1,100 or so, $900 a week because you get the extra 600. Yeah. I mean, really, younger people, especially in their right mind, why would they go back to making less? So that's got to be a huge challenge and a huge burden. Again, the monies are out there as a forgivable loan, but if the companies can't accept it because they know they can't get everybody back by June 1st, then that's just putting them in a horrible place, even though the funds are available.
Right. And those folks are staying on that unemployment insurance through July 31st.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That's the whole summer. It's certainly a larger conversation to have, but it's certainly, I think everybody on the call probably has those experiences or they've heard of them. And it's definitely a concern that we all need to participate in trying to rectify. Let's see, what business, oh, go ahead. Did you have something to add, Gina?
No, I'm good.
What business processes are you emphasizing that are best practices for reopening? Does anybody have a comment on that?
Well, we did a survey. Actually, it's out right now, and I can't take credit for this. I was just part of the team of what our consumers are going to want to see for best practices. Hand washing, hand sanitizing, anything, 88%. And this was a survey that that's still out there, but the initial figures came back for 1,100 people that took this survey of consumers who have come to Lake George and who are looking to come here. So they wanted to know that hand sanitizing was happening everywhere. Social distancing, 75%. The disinfecting, and they want chemical-based disinfecting. And like Scott was saying, they want to see that. Okay. They want to see that it's happening. And then the last was the PPE, whether it's masks, gloves, screens, and, some barrier. So that was really interesting, what they wanted to see and what we want to see too, as consumers. So it was just really overwhelming, in that regard. And as a guest, they want to see that regular hand washing, that they are willing to do. Okay. And so it's got to be available to them. Social distancing, masks, and then gloves as the bare bottom bones, that they don't want to have to wear gloves as a guest.
Okay. So they want to see it versus then hear about it.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's so powerful, Gina and Kelly, is that people want to see it happening. They don't want to hear that it's happening. I mean, just the other day at the grocery store, as they were doing the cart return, I saw someone spraying each individual cart. And I just thought, wow, that's so powerful to me to be able to see that happening, as opposed to you saying, we're sanitizing every cart. I see it happening. Gina, and I've been down to Lake George Village. The keep 6 feet away signs are up. Some businesses are open, some aren't. Has the village or those businesses, especially those tourist attractions, started talking about those survey results and how those might be implemented and what might happen for summer 2020?
So good question. And I see Beth Gelazzo on here. She and her husband, they own the Lake George Escape, and looking at, how their business, smaller, where they can actually they can take your reservation online. They can keep your group together. They can social distance you and walk you through. So they're going to be tasked with putting their business plan so that we can run that up the county, in an effort to open and show all of that. But some of it goes to the advance. You do want to tell your guests what to expect in advance. So we've talked a lot about that. I see some other folks who are part of our bigger picture of putting together those plans in place that, you're going to want to change your website to know this is what we've done, or show a video of how we're cleaning your rooms in advance, or we've got this UVS technology of how we're sanitizing before you get here, whether it's a hotel room, your front desk. You may not have a coffee maker anymore in that room because we don't want that as a touch point that we have to sanitize every day. So you've also got to, I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know that everybody's going to take it out of that room, but you're going to want, you may have to set a new level of expectation for a guest coming, and what our expectation is of them as a guest. Or just like at the grocery store, you might wait in line to be the 15th person to go into Home Depot now, or to Aldi, or wherever. We're seeing that already for where we are allowed to go. So we've tried to talk about, what are you going to need to do as a business in this tourism hospitality to forewarn your guests, or show a new level of expectation before they get there. And then when they arrive, do they sign off on what they're responsible for? Is there signage for that, everywhere? What are the floor decals going to educate you on what you can or cannot do? Or if you are going to use the pool, you might have to sign up to get your 30 minutes. Maybe somebody's going to do it that way. So your family gets this 30 minutes to an hour, and somebody else gets, and then we are going to wipe everything, so all of that has not been all put into place, but these are all the thoughts that are running through of, pre, during, and post of welcoming people.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Brandon. Scott had his hand up back there.
Well, yeah, I just was trying not to jump out of order, but I agree 100%. The key is you can't be ignorant. And if you're going to open up your business and you don't understand what social distancing is, you need to understand. It's 6 foot. If you're under 6 foot, you wear a face cover. If you don't know what the signs and symptoms are of COVID, then you shouldn't be operating. There has to be complete understanding. And it's pretty simple, really, when you break it down, but there can't be wishy-washy. And I talked before about having the stages and the sectors. It's important to understand that each of your sectors is unique. Make sure that you have a protocol that you're following and stay with it. And everyone should see you following it, and every employee. A culture has a group of people who are following a similar idea and a mindset. That's team, that's tribes, that's culture. And if your business is not following a culture of seriousness to COVID, your guests are not going to feel comfortable. And this is the business you're in, is making me feel comfortable when I show up with my family. So key components, you got to be thinking about them.
Absolutely. Thanks, Scott. So another question. If you could rewind the clock and go back 1 year, what would you have done in order to be more prepared for this happening? Not that any of you really could see it. We have no crystal balls. But if you could have a year ago, what could you have done?
I mean, for me, speaking in the short term, because we don't know when this is going to end. So I'm prepared for the short term. If this goes more than 6 months, that's when I really start to get worried about things. But I think any good business owner has a plan to survive short-term things. So it's after that 6 months to a year, that's when, people are going, now what? So we are hoping that tourism starts back up. We're hoping that weddings and events happen. We're hoping people travel. We're hoping people are allowed to go to restaurants and eat again and things like that. But I think that's really my answer to that question.
Strange, right? I mean, who sits there, and sorry, Gina, you want to
no.
But who sits there in some of the industries that are in our region and says, I need to have a succession plan if someone can't come to get their hair cut? I have a good friend that owns a funeral home. That's always been his biggest joke. I'm always going to have work. And I tell him how sick he is, but think about this for a minute. They don't have work, right? So it's in the construction and mining industry, we figure that there's going to be a hurricane or a tornado in some of the country. There might be a mine explosion. God forbid, maybe a serious injury or fatality. We emergency plan to be able to do everything tomorrow like we're doing it today if one of those situations occur, including virtual training policies, procedures, move our office space. And it's just, those are much different arenas.
Thank you, Scott. Gina?
I think for me, in my role, I was always so not into remote working. So having a technology, we are still not there with all of our technology for all of our staff. We're really blessed that people have a laptop at their home that we haven't provided for them. If we provided a desktop. So just knowing that, technology is what is allowing us to actually run our businesses, and we're limping along. I mean, God forbid if I lived in the north part of our county, and not having the broadband, and I'd be at the mercy of a hotspot in a parking lot at Johnny Rockets or Stewart's, or it just makes me upset. So I think that for me, I mean, now I could see, the trust that you have in your employees that are doing their work remotely, and the work that they're doing is substantial and doing a great job at that. So the working remotely and technology, it's just, I'm going to reinforce everything that I can to make sure that, as somebody said, you should always be saving, putting aside 10 to 25% of your budget into technology and new technologies. Man, I'm going to be lobbying for that.
And training.
Yes.
So
yes.
Me coming from the college atmosphere, of course, I'm always looking for training, and I know the Office of Business Central that Brandon and Bonnie represent, they're always putting together training, as he mentioned, and Office of Continuing Ed also does, and that is one thing that I think everybody in every industry was caught short with, certainly looking back. You can have contingency plans for the rainy day. You can be the Great Escape and say, what do we do when it rains for 2 days straight? But it's only 2 days and it's not a big deal. But going forward, like you said, if you have to prepare now, possibly going into maybe a second wave, who knows what's going to happen?
Right.
It is going to be kind of reinventing, who's responsible for the technology, who's going to be responsible for training, what training do you need? Where are the gaps in education? Where are the gaps in knowledge? And I think at some point, again, across the board, you can help everybody figure that out. That's going to be clearly important.
Mm-hmm.
So then one of the other things we kind of covered a little bit, but looking for positivity. So, what have you learned through this pandemic that you would say was positive besides, the consortiums that you were talking about? But is there anything else that you can think of that there's a silver lining?
It's a lot of people helping a lot of people, which, has always been the same people I see helping people constantly. The same businesses are donating here and doing that. But now you're just seeing a lot more individuals doing it because they have time and they have a skill set that maybe they're sewing things or, sewing masks or things like that, like Tara on there. I happen to see Tara. So I know she's been doing a lot of that. Just, things like that. So you see a lot of individuals helping each other more than you did. And I like to just say, hey, it's like the 1950s white picket fence era. It's the way it should be anyway, but it's 2020. So
yeah,
what's old is new again.
Yeah, ditto. I agree. Lots of people helping. We've got a mechanical company we work with in New Hampshire, and they're taking advantage of the necessary programs to keep their people busy, but they aren't putting in as many air conditionings and working on as many heating systems as they normally would. So they are also donating their time to deliver food and I got guys that are typically putting in plumbing and heating systems. They're roaming around raking people's lawns, and the employer's paying them for it, but they're showing up in a mechanical truck and helping people get their chores done and things. So that's kind of a resourceful way of both keeping your staff busy, but also helping out the community in a time of need.
Absolutely. Giving back, is something that, I've talked to a lot of people, and when I teach HR classes, we always say, what would you do if you had more time in your day or your week to do? And you constantly hear employees and managers and owners all say, we would love to volunteer more. So this is an absolute perfect time to throw that volunteerism in. And I think, like you said, all of you have said, we're seeing that happen regardless of whether they're getting paid for it. If they're on the clock, people are just saying, how can I help? This is my community. I want to help my community.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely a positive. I enjoy seeing that every day. How about trends? So we don't really know what's going to happen in the next 6 to 9 months. We listen, we hear, the news stories change every day. So I think we're all glued to the news and listening to what's happening. But from your perspective, what do you honestly think is going to happen in the next 6 to 9 months?
I see two things happening. First, smaller events. Yes, events, weddings, and parties are going to start up again, but I see them being smaller. Let's just, hypothetically say 50 people, which is going to be great overall for the industry. Not so great for the venues because they're going to lose seats. A wedding is basically a seat like a restaurant, same thing for the venue. So the food and beverage is going to take a hit, and they're also going to lose hotel nights, which is going to take a hit as well. Fortunately for vendors like myself and entertainment, photography, video, all that stuff, the price is the same. So that doesn't impact us. We just want to get back to work. But I think that's going to be one of the big things is that on the event end, you are going to see events start back up when they're allowed to. And with venues, obviously, that are taking care of everything I take care of. But they're just going to be they're going to be smaller in nature. So that's one of the things that I see.
Absolutely. Scott?
Agree. Local tourism. The last I heard, I think it was last weekend, Warren Buffett pulled all of his money out of the airline business. He said people are going to travel in an airplane less and airlines are going to go out of business. What does that mean to the local community? I'm for Warrensburg, not going to get an airplane and go to Florida. I'm going to drive my family's wagon down to Lake George Holiday Inn or Fort William Henry, and I'm going to hang out around their pool, and I'm going to go on a cruise ship at the Lake George Boat Company. That's what I'm going to have to do this summer. I'm going to change it to local tourism versus jumping ship and getting out of state.
So, and to that point, the issue will be as hotels and restaurants come out of this, if they can only open with half of the capacity. So if you're right now, if you are a motel that has 50 rooms and you can only open 25 of those rooms, and with your sanitizing and sterilization of that room, you may not be able to open that room up for another 72 hours. So that cuts your capacity even less. So you'll need less staff, or you may not have the staff because they've enjoyed the furlough and they have not chosen not to come back to work. So you've got those other issues, and what that will happen in our county. There'll be less sales tax generated, less occupancy tax generated. So now you've also now cut into the county budget to do other essential services. So we're going to see a trickle down effect of some businesses not being able to open and survive because now they're reduced to that capacity. So we have less people coming. So there's a whole trickle down effect so you said 6 to 9 months. So 9 months from now, we're in a new year of a county budget. And then what does that look like from someone who couldn't pay their rent and or their mortgage? Glens Falls National, phenomenal local community bank. And let's say 10% of people can't pay their mortgages, which they put 95% of their money back into our community. So what is that trickle down effect? So there's a lot of unknowns, just the economy of our county. And we are a family of family businesses, so I want to be hopeful, but that's reality. So for instance, today, if the Fort William Henry, you mentioned that, if they're not getting 50 reservations a day, that room is perishable. They can't get that back. Like they can't eat that banana tomorrow because it went away today. It was eaten today or perished today. So we've got to think about that. What does that look like? And it's, we can do what we can to pull out of this year, but this year adds to next year. We've lost a quarter of business, sales tax, occupancy tax right now, from 7 weeks ago to even mid-June. It's a full quarter of business. So that's reality.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. And I think about, when I'm teaching classes with this industry, I talk about, it's heads in beds, cheeks in seats, for restaurants and hotels. And that's just not going to be a thing anymore. So, if our occupancy rates, if we have to take them down from wanting to be 100% to really praying that we're 50%, that means it's going to drive, the prices up. So ADR is going to have to be the number versus occupancy, and that's going to be a challenge for everybody. If their rooms were normally 99, all of a sudden they're either going to have to take a hit, or it's going to be $299 for the room that someone paid 99 for last year. And I think there's going to be, a little difference in how they're going to handle that.
Well, on the flip side, that came up in our survey. Room rates will be, you may not be able to charge that higher rate because the average traveler has been furloughed, has a lot less money. We still need them to come here because we've always been a destination of the everyman could come here. You can sleep in a tent, you can sleep in a castle, you can sleep everywhere in between. So rate will still play a factor, but I don't think you're going to see rates that, you know what I mean? Because right now we have people that we need you to stay here. So there could be a rate war that comes down, in some regard.
I see that.
I mean, that happened after 9/11. It happened after the recession. Things were given away. So in that regard, I'm not so much the rate war as much as that capacity to how Mark had said that, and then how do we deal with the less capacity? I mean, this is a great destination that people want to come to. But for instance, if the Cool and Shoring Arena doesn't have a concert, what happens to those restaurants day in and day out that are trying to stay open in downtown Glens Falls? You know what I mean? That are so impacted by an arena event or the theater festival or just that, that foot traffic that comes from that gathering. So again, not trying to be Debbie Downer, but just a realist. And then how do we overcome that? Because we only have so much individually, locally that we can spend ourselves, to keep our neighbors afloat.
And I do think that we have a good area. So when we're talking about COVID and the pandemic, everybody's talking about the cities, where there's a high population. People will look to our area because we do have a low population. We have beautiful Adirondacks. It's a huge park. All those things that we all know and we love about it. So I think we have to be ready to embrace the fact that we're going to have many more people wishing and wanting to jump in their car from their 3-hour drive, or maybe they'll even extend it to 4 or 5 to come stay with us. And that's just going to be, again, it's a positive, but we have to work with that occupancy and certainly the amount of people that we can have in terms of density. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot we have to think about. I do feel very positive about things. It's just going to be a delayed positive. And as Scott said, we have to be prepared. We have to be ready. We have to have all of our ducks in a row. And back to, you have to see it. So you can't just have someone say, hey, just so you know, your room was freshly cleaned. That's great. But unless you see it, it's not going to happen. So I think all of those things we can definitely come out.
One other thing I think is going to happen, and I'm because I'm seeing it at the stores all the time already. You're seeing it on social media, and it's going to be everywhere, not just here. Is that if you look at how much money right now, the limited money that people are spending on their houses and their backyards, and the pictures I see every day of new fire pits and new decks and new this and new that, they're literally making their houses so they don't have to leave, and I think that's going to have an impact locally everywhere around the whole, state, a small impact. But if you haven't seen it, then I don't know who you're friends with on social media, but everyone's doing it. It's like, they're just because they have the time. That was always the issue. People didn't have time. They always had the money. They just didn't have the time. Now they have some money and all the time in the world. So it's amazing who a carpenter is real quick.
So Mark, you gave me a perfect segue. I want to honor everybody's time and recognize that we are just a little hair over 7 o'clock, which we told people we would try to end on time. So Kelly, I'll throw it to you if you have a final question you want to hit everyone with. I just want to remind our participants, if any of you have a question, feel free to either raise your hand in the chat feature or just type hand and we'll try to get to you if there's any crowdsourced questions. But I just want to make sure that we try to honor everybody's time tonight. So Kelly, if you want to throw one more question to everyone, that'd be awesome.
Thanks, Brandon. So from, again, my role as an educator, in addition to other things, I just want to ask the three of you, and of course, anybody else, what do you think we need to be teaching our students right now? Is there anything in particular in terms of, you know, hey, I have students in the hospitality and tourism and marketing and entrepreneurship. What do you think they should know if they're considering perhaps going into this field?
Two things I can think of off the top of my head. The first one, and maybe you already are, is diversification, especially if they're going to be working for themselves. Make sure your portfolio has different things. For example, yes, I'm not DJing right now. I'm not planning a wedding. However, we're still booking barn events for the future. So there's still that's that growing vertically, as my friend KC would say, you know, just always have that in mind. The second thing relates back to portfolio. If you're talking about college students who clearly, you know, the average college student, you know, between 18 to 24 years old isn't even thinking about retirement. And if there's a way they could start putting $10, $20 a week automatically into an IRA or something, when they get to be my age, they're going to be very thankful they did. And most business owners, most self-employed people, especially small companies, do not think about that because it doesn't come automatically. It's not till you get older and your accountant says, how much do you have saved for retirement? Wait a minute, what? So those are my two pieces of advice.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
I think his idea, you know, the diversified, you know, and the willingness to do all things as an employee, to learn. Hey, I want to learn this, you know, throw me in, coach. And then the other thing is face-to-face communication is still key. Even if we're in a mask, you know, our eyes can tell a whole story. But, you know, we've learned with Zoom, you know, and being able to talk to a person and not have that barrier of email is still, you know, people trust who they can see. And you know, even if it's this form of communication is being able to communicate and face-to-face and not hiding behind other technology.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you. Scott, do you have anything?
The only thing I'll add to it is just keep in mind, emotional intelligence, IQ can get you somewhere, but unless you're going to be growth-minded, positive, proactive, see it, own it, solve it. I agree with Mark, make sure that you're diversified. That's where it's at. The world is run by extremely powerful people and they have high levels of emotional intelligence, not IQ, not math, science, and arithmetic and languages, high-end EQ. So stay on track with that. Pick up a book on grit or growth mindset, something that'll really do you some good.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, all of you. I think this was a great session. I'm hoping that everybody learned a lot. Definitely, you know, throw some questions at us. I think Brandon's going to probably give us a little bit of a kind of final word, unless there's some questions that you've seen that have popped up and you want to ask.
No, we haven't gotten any questions. Heather Tift is on the call. She's with the Capital Region Chamber of Commerce. She's also just providing her contact information to be able to be a resource to get information out there as well. So Heather has offered her contact information in the chat box. We'll also make sure to share that in the minutes as well, or the meeting notes as well, just to make sure that everyone has another opportunity to get their info out there. I see one hand up, and that's from Kim London. So Kim, do you have a question?
Oh, she's got unmute.
I just wanted to ask about, I know some people on here might be doing like smaller short-term rentals or Airbnbs, or how did you think that might affect, or what kind of, you know, policies might be coming down for those types of people or second homeowners that rent out longer term rentals?
So we just talked about that earlier. I was on a call and, you know, they don't have the same policies in place as a hotel motel. They're not regulated by Department of Health. They don't have to pay liability insurance yet because there's not a contract either statewide or within the county. It's not completed. So they're at a different advantage or disadvantage, depending, you know, you can show up as a family, but they may not have the same regulations in place that that we would have or any of our hotel motels would have. So right now, I think that you would you would rent that at your own risk.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Gina. Anything else from anyone? Any final thoughts?
One more thing we can all learn how to do is cut our own hair.
Butter color.
Oh man.
And those of you who knew me 2 weeks ago know that this is a self-done job. So
Pre-planning for a pandemic.
There you go. Scott's got it.
I'm not shaving.
Sarah, I don't know who you are, but I love that wine glass there. So good for you.
Nice, Sarah.
That's working from home.
Yeah, well, it's after 5 o'clock. You can have a cocktail and webinar after 5 o'clock.
Oh, if I had been told that.
Nobody
I know.
said you couldn't.
I know. We'll have to change next week's to just be a happy hour event.
Go. Thanks, Brandon.
So, no, I just want to thank you, Kelly, so much for moderating tonight's conversation, and to each of our panelists, Mark, Scott, and Gina. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and sharing your areas of expertise. I think it's so important to be able to pull together people right now, even from at home. I know that we've been given different opportunities to present our views and ideas in different sorts of platforms. Gina, I saw that you were just on TV not too long ago. Mark, you're always out there on social media. Scott, I'm learning more about you too. And it's just been so great to be able to see people come together and find their own ways of presenting the knowledge that they have and share the viewpoints that could be helpful to so many. So thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Thank you to our panelists, Kelly again for moderating, and thank you to all of you for spending the last hour plus with us, even if it was with a glass of wine or eating your dinner or telling your kids to sit back down and just give you a minute. I appreciate all of you for being able to take a couple of moments and join us tonight. We'll
Thanks
follow
for
up this
having us.
We'll follow up this conversation with an email. So for all of you who registered this evening, you provided us your email. We'll just follow it up with a brief review. The session was recorded, so we'll provide you the link to the recording. And then we just have a quick survey as well. Just let us know how we're doing. Let us know how the information was valuable to you, or any type of feedback that you have. Our goal is to be able to continue providing panel conversations. Next week, we'll be doing one on the food and beverage industry and what that industry is starting to shape up and look like. So our goal is to keep doing these conversations and keep bringing together some local content experts to be able to have these conversations with our communities. SUNY Adirondack is a community college, and we're proud of that. We're able to reach into Warren, Washington, and Saratoga counties. We want to make sure that we're providing updated information to everyone. The only way we know if we're doing that is if you tell us if we're doing that. So if you can all just take a moment and fill out that survey with your most honest feedback, we would appreciate it. Follow us on social media. We're always doing cool things. You'll see my kid kicking me in the face during a Zoom call. And other than that, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.